Locked On Podcast Network presents Locked On Sports Today.
The Knicks and Heat each needed the win for playoff seeding purposes, but they played each other, so someone had to win. Also, the Titans are going through one hell of a makeover, and Ronel Blanco is everything that is right with baseball. Today's episode is brought to you by Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDON for $20 off your first purchase. I'm Peter Bukowski, starting your day with the can't-miss stories and biggest debates in sports. You're Locked On Sports Today.
Searching all major sports. Found.
Let's start with the biggest story.
The all-heart New York Knicks were the story of mid to late March. Winners of 7 of 8 at one point, and that one loss was to the defending champion Nuggets. Now, after a 109-99 loss to the Heat on Tuesday, they've dropped 3 in a row, and they are desperately hoping to get healthy as we get to the postseason push. Gavin Shaw from Locked On Knicks joins me now. And Gavin, there's only so much you can do when it's Jalen Brunson and a bunch of guys trying really, really hard. But the Heat have made that work, but the Knicks have made that work too. How much can they really do over the next couple of weeks as they wait for the reinforcements?
Yeah, so you always say when there are injuries, and I'm sure, Peter, you say this on the football side of things a lot as well, it's not the backup, it's the backup to the backup. So the Knicks starting 5, which right now, Jalen Brunson, Deuce McBride, Dante DiVincenzo, Isaiah Hartenstein, Josh Hart, since March 1st has been the best lineup in the NBA, plus 36.5 net rating coming into tonight's game. That is 9 points better than any other team in the NBA. So this group of scrappers that, I mean, I just listened, you're right. Like to some extent, it is a bunch of other guys. And they've been incredible despite that because they're really well coached because Jalen Brunson has been playing like a borderline MVP. And all those guys have been punching above their weight. The issue is the bench is really, really weak at this point. And they got an excellent performance tonight from Bojan Bogdanovic against the Heat team that is getting healthy and looking scary as they always start to do this time of year. And Terry Rozier was cooking, had easily his best game of his short Heat career. It wasn't enough. And they're probably exhausted coming off 2 heart-stopping games coming into this one.
Yeah, if you're going to get 34 points from Terry Rozier most of the time, if Jimmy Butler and Bam Adebayo are playing, you're going to have some issues as an opponent. You mentioned the backups to the backups. I take it what you're saying is, hey, look, if the backups have to play, then the guys who were on the bench are not on the bench. It's the backups to the backups, and that's what's creating the problems here. In the postseason, though, that's less of a problem. So if the postseason started tomorrow, how big a problem do you think it would be?
I think it's an issue in terms of these guys are probably exhausted. Like I think Deuce McBride over the previous 7 games had played more minutes than anyone in the NBA, and then he played 45 tonight. So I assume that's not going away. Josh Hart had like a 9-game stretch of playing 40 minutes. Like Dante DiVincenzo was spectacular tonight.
Did Josh Hart come off the floor at one point? Like he played 3 or 4 straight games where he played every minute?
Something like that. And DiVincenzo, I mean, he's just been carrying a load that he hasn't had to his whole career. Hartenstein was beaten up. He's gotten a little healthier. The Knicks actually have Mitchell Robinson back there. So, I mean, the only question with him is just getting his timing down, getting his conditioning down. But if he can get closer to that spot, that'll help the Knicks. At the center spot, they just so they should be good. It's just a question is like all the success that lineups had, will it convert to the playoffs, and just how badly will they lose the non-Jalen Brunson minutes? Because it was a theme last year where they didn't have 2 of their top 3 players essentially. Julius Randle playing through an ankle that eventually required surgery and caused him to miss the whole summer, and Emmanuel quickly got hurt like right at the start of the second round, missed the rest of the playoffs. And we saw like the Knicks against the Heat were just fine when Jalen Brunson was on the floor, and they scored something like 85 points per 100 possessions when he was off the floor. And I think you're looking at a similar type of team that if they get the right matchup, they can scrape their way out of the first round. I don't see any world where they win a second round series without OG Anunoby and Julius Randle.
It seems like this is the kind of team, though, that also needs to stay out of the play-in. Every team feels like they need to stay out of the play-in, but you need the rest. You need the week that you get by not being in the play-in, because if this team, which is already putting heavy minutes on guys like Deuce McBride and Josh Hart, that's going to be really problematic come postseason time.
Yeah, still 2 games up on the Heat, so there's a little bit of a cushion there. I can't say like 5 days ago I was even thinking about the plan for the Knicks. I was thinking more so, all right, we got, despite everything, maybe like a dark horse chance at the 2 seed. And now you start sweating a little bit and you say, all right, when is this going to end? I mean, the Knicks, maybe it gets a little easier because this was a tough game, but coming tonight, 5th hardest remaining schedule in basketball, a team that's exhausted, demoralized, but super resilient. They showed it off tonight. I am still not incredibly concerned that they are going to fall into the play-in, but it's something you have to talk about just because, I mean, the East is just that congested right now.
Stay up to date all year on the New York Knicks by subscribing to Locked On Sports Today and Locked On Knicks on your favorite podcast app and on YouTube. Thanks for making Locked On Sports Today your first listen. Coming up, the Tennessee Titans have been one of the busiest teams in the NFL, and it shows. Wait, do they think they're actually going to be good this year? Before we get to that, Joel Embiid returned to the court on Tuesday. With killer last-minute deals, all-in prices, and their best price guarantee, Gametime takes the guesswork out of buying tickets. They're obsessed with finding ways to help you save money on tickets. Gametime has deals on tickets right up to the start of the event, and even an hour after it starts. It's the place to find last-minute seats. Find exclusive flash deals and sponsored deals on tickets for football, basketball, baseball, concerts, comedy, theater, and more. With zone deals, you pick a section, and Gametime picks the seats for big-time savings. And the Gametime guarantee means you'll always get the best price you can find. If you find tickets in the same section and row for less, Gametime will credit you 110% of the difference. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime. For a limited time, all users can get $20 off any MLB purchase of $150 or more in the Gametime app with code FIRSTPITCH. Terms apply. That's code FIRST, PITCH, for $20 off from March 25th to April 14th. Download the Gametime app today. Last-minute tickets, the lowest price, guaranteed. Are you watching Fox Sports or ESPN on your TV all day? Have you turned down the volume because of all the shouting? Make the switch to Locked On Sports Today, a free 24/7 sports streaming channel programmed for you every day to bring you the biggest stories without all the screaming. Locked On Sports Today brings you the can't miss analysis, opinions, and news, streaming 24/7 on YouTube or the free Amazon Fire TV channels app, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Philadelphia 76ers held on for a close win over the Oklahoma City Thunder, but that was only the second best thing that happened for them on Tuesday night. The first, Joel Embiid is back.
Thought he really impacted it, was defensively late, but yeah, he looked pretty good for not playing for a couple months, that's for sure.
Speaking of Philly, Bryce Harper was making sure the Phillies weren't losing back-to-back games to the Reds.
What a darn game from the Philadelphia Phillies, and what a game from Bryce Harper. So the Phils win 9-4 over the Cincinnati Reds. Connor Thomas, your host of Locked On Phillies, here with you. And Bryce Harper he's superhuman. The guy is unbelievable. He did not have a hit coming into this game. And he goes out tonight and he hits 3 home runs, including a grand slam to put this game away. Those are the type of performances that remind you that when he's in a small slump, you should absolutely never, ever doubt on Bryce Harper. It's why he's going to be an all-time great Philly when he's said and done. And it's why we have so much faith in this team, because when you have a guy like that, you're always in contention. Bryce Harper's a monster. We'll talk about it more on tomorrow's episode of Locked On Phillies.
Back in the association, the Clippers were in Northern California to face the Kings.
The Clippers started out good. It was a good first quarter for them. Although they were tied at 24, they had lots of energy. Paul George got off to a hot start. Everything was looking good. They had trouble with the Kings when they played them in LA a few weeks ago. They got smashed by them, punched in the mouth. It was ugly and not fun. So I was like, a little payback here. This is a big game. Not huge, but important, meaningful, down the stretch. Oklahoma City lost to Philadelphia tonight. So I thought, all right, Clippers are going to come out. I know Kawhi Leonard was out, but it seems like every time the Clippers have an excuse to not play well, they take full advantage of it.
Caitlin Clark makes threes and brings in eyeballs. Iowa's 94-87 victory over LSU in the Elite Eight of the women's NCAA tournament on Monday night averaged 12.3 million viewers on ESPN, according to Nielsen. That makes it one of the most viewed games in any sport other than NFL football over the past year. They outdrew all but one of the 5 games in last year's NBA Finals, along with the clinching game of last year's World Series. In fact, they beat them by almost 1 million viewers. It was also the most watched men's or women's college basketball game ever on ESPN, more than doubling the prior largest audience. When it was Calvin Ridley, that was one thing. Try to get help for Will Levis in year 2. But then the Titans went out and made arguably the second of the 2 biggest splashes of the offseason so far, snagging L'Jarius Sneed for a future day 3 pick from the Kansas City Chiefs, to which I wondered, then why trade him if you're Kansas City? But that's a really good player that Tennessee now gets. Tyler Rowland from Locked On Titans joins me now. And Ty, one of the reasons why I wanted to talk to you was to try and make sense of this offseason that Tennessee is having, because the last time we talked about this with Calvin Ridley, I get it. Overpay for competency. It's inflation on the Christian Kirk deal, whatever. Like, that's fine. But they seem to be going, hey, we think we can win right now.
Yeah, I mean, it looks like that's what they're doing. And to me, Pete, my big takeaway is they must believe in Will Levis in the building to go out and spend these resources. I figured that they would go out and make one big move. Like you said, the Calvin Ridley move, that makes sense. They need a ton of help. Now, cornerback was a disaster for the Titans and has been for the last few years. That's just a reality. Offensive tackle, wide receiver, and cornerback. They missed huge in the first round of the draft 3 years in a row. So those are big positions of need. To go out and make a second big move, to me, that's not, hey, we're just trying to make the team better. That's, we think we can win right now. So that really stood out to me as, oh, okay, maybe their thoughts on Will Levis are different, because right now I think it's only fair to say who knows with Will Levis, but they're in the building every day. They see him. They know what he's about behind the scenes. And I think this is a big vote of confidence for Will Levis and his ability to pilot this team to a playoff run. I mean, you don't make this move and this signing of Calvin Ridley and the trade, especially for Sneed, you don't do that if you don't think you're making the playoffs this year. You know, those are big veteran contracts that, you know, we can look at the details and everything, but in reality, they're 2-year deals. That basically every contract in the NFL is a 2-year deal, right, if we're being honest, you know. Yeah. So to me, that's saying, hey, we're not, you know, keeping our powder dry here. No, we're going for it right now. So I think that maybe it's a little far-fetched to consider the Titans real contenders. I think they should try to push for the playoffs this year. But I think they absolutely think that after this draft class and after next year's all season, they could be a Super Bowl contender if Will Levis hits. And again, these moves make me believe that they believe in Will Levis, which is obviously huge.
How much do you think the division plays into this? Like, if they were in the AFC North, do you think they'd be pushing in the chips the same way? Or is this like, hey, we see vulnerability in the AFC South. We think we can go steal this division if Will Levis is the guy we think he is?
Yeah, no, 100%. That has to factor in your path to the playoffs. And again, we're talking about they think they can compete right away. You have to think that the division and where they're at factors into that. Look, the reality is the AFC South is more exciting right now than it's been in a long time. Yeah, and it may very well be
those Thursday night games are going to hit a little different.
Oh yeah, you know it. But you know, to me, Jacksonville really had a poor offseason. They're one of the big losers so far of the offseason. The Colts, while they re-signed it's just the same old Chris Ballard, toeing the line, not making any big moves. And the Colts are never going to take that next step out of mediocrity if they don't make a big risk and a big splash. And Ballard just won't do it. Houston had some good moves this all season. You give them that credit, but I think their all season has been incredibly overrated as well. The addition of Danielle Hunter is good, but to Titans, I think they way overpaid for Azeez Al-Shire and way overpaid for a 34-year-old Danico Autry, especially Azeez Al-Shire, who was an average replacement level linebacker bordering on starter to backup, and they gave him the most guaranteed money of any off-ball linebacker so far this all season. Asinine, in my opinion. So while Houston had a good all season and CJ Stroud was impressive, I don't think if you're honest about Houston's roster from the top to bottom, I don't think that they're like a clear Super Bowl contender. And I don't think that they're so good that the Titans couldn't unseat them if they hit in the draft. That'll be key, for the Titans to flip it overnight. You got to hit in free agency and the draft. So it'll take both. But yeah, I don't think that the AFC South has a clear favorite. I know that Houston is good and they'll probably get that title, but I'm just not convinced that Houston is some juggernaut now because of this offseason. Danielle Hunter was a good replacement for Jonathan Grenard, but outside of that, I wasn't impressed by anything they've done.
Joe Alt or Rome Odunze at 7?
For me, that's easy. It's Joe Alt. If the conversation is Malik Neighbors or Joe Alt, I think it gets more difficult. I think that Malik Neighbors is a better fit for where the Titans are at right now. You slide him into the slot, let him develop, and then eventually replace DeAndre Hopkins on the outside. I think the Titans would actually take Malik Neighbors, if I'm honest, based on what they've said, what the vibes are around the team, Brian Callahan's conversations with media. I think they would take Malik Neighbors, but I think Joe Alt would be the good decision. I know that Alt maybe doesn't have the high-end upside of J.C. Latham or Olu Fashanu, whatever he decides to call himself these days. But I think that the Titans don't need to take a risk at offensive tackle right now. They need to take the guy you're going to plug in. He's going to be Jake Matthews, Colton Miller, Taylor Lewan even. Lewan was never an elite top 5 offensive tackle that won with power and bullied people. He was an athlete who won with his length and won with his feet quickness, and I think Joe Alt can be exactly that. So for me, at this stage with the Titans roster and where they're at as a team, I have been the leader of the Alt cult all season long, and I will continue to drive that bus. But I think Malik Neighbors would make them think about it. But honestly, if neither of those guys are there, I would take Rome Odunze as opposed to trading back for the Titans. So I don't think they can go wrong at number 7 as long as 3 or 4 quarterbacks go, which is what we expect.
Stay up to date on the Tennessee Titans all year by subscribing to Locked On Sports Today and Locked On Titans on your favorite podcast app and on YouTube. Coming up, Ronel Blanco is why baseball is so unique. Whether you're at the ballpark or on your couch, get into all the action on the diamond with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Keeping an eye on the pitching matchup, looking for the home dog. FanDuel has all the ways to play this season. Right now, new customers get $200 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. That's $200 to use on run lines, money lines, over-unders, and so much more. You can even combine prop bets on things like strikeouts and home runs to increase your payout. The Yankees and Diamondbacks playing baseball in the desert, and FanDuel likes the Yanks on the road. The Bronx Bombers -116 on the money line. Just visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and bet on baseball all season long. Ronel Blanco provided us with one of the earliest early season no-hitters in Major League Baseball history. The fact that he went from one of the last players to make the Astros roster to now part of history is why Sully said, "This is everything that's right with baseball" on a recent Locked On MLB.
Then Ronel Blanco last night just showed us. This is why. No sport can do this. I mean, you could have someone unlikely come off the bench and score a bunch of points in a basketball game, or a backup goalie stop a bunch of pucks and help a hockey team win, or an injured quarterback and someone comes off the bench and leads them to victory. I'm sure that's all possible. But to have someone as unlikely as Ronel Blanco come out and dominate a game and essentially take over the entire sport for a night, I don't know what other sport could have an event like that. Ronel Blanco, for those of you who slept last night, made his 8th career start. He wasn't even expected to make the team, and he made his first start of the year after the Astros got off to a horrific start against being swept by the New York Yankees.
This is why we love sports. One of the last players to make the team does something historic. This is the kind of thing that they make movies about, that they write songs about. We love sports not because the outcomes are readily available. We can't predict what's going to happen. If the best teams always won, if the best players always played the best, if they always triumphed, it wouldn't be that interesting. It would be more like what we see in business, where we know Apple is just going to keep crushing everybody. That's not that interesting. That's not that fun. What's fun is when the upstart company comes out of nowhere and creates a phenomenon. We see this in sports all the time. It's part of what continues to draw it to us day after day, even when our season doesn't go the way we want it to, when our favorite players don't play their best, when they don't win the championship, and it's heartbreak and it's agonizing. We get these moments when someone that maybe the average Astros fan has never heard of goes out and throws a no-hitter. These are the moments we live for in sports, and why we at the Locked On Podcast Network do what we do, because we know so many of you live for this the same way we do. And finally, Rajon Rondo officially announced his retirement from the NBA after 16 seasons. This may come as a surprise to most fans, as he hasn't played in 2 years. So many may have thought he was already retired. Speaking on All the Smoke podcast, Rondo said, "Yeah, I'm done. I can't. I'd rather spend time with my kids." When your team added him to the roster, and 9 different teams did, you got the feeling that you were close to contending for a long time with Rajon Rondo. But I also understand the impulse to want to spend more time with my kids. I feel that every day. Are you watching Fox Sports or ESPN on your TV all day? Do you have to turn down the volume with all the shouting? Make the switch to Locked On Sports today, a free 24/7 sports streaming channel programmed for you every day to bring you the biggest stories without all the screaming. Locked On Sports today brings you the can't miss analysis, opinions, and news streaming 24/7 on YouTube or the free Amazon Fire TV channels app, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Coming up on the next Locked On Sports today, who has gotten off to the hottest start in Major League Baseball. So at least until tomorrow, stay locked on sports today.
Locked On Podcast Network presents Locked On Sports Today.
For more episodes of Locked On Sports Today, go to our video on demand. Click on sports at the top of your screen. There, you'll find past episodes of Locked On Sports Today, plus other Locked On shows on demand.